The Constant is filled with some of the most diverse people one can find, each complete with their insanely detailed backstories, personalities, and random fun facts, all making their way into the Constant in some way. Each and every one of them is weird in some fashion, some a little more insane than the rest. So let us discuss how these wackos managed to get themselves in such a circumstance. Let's talk about the survivors of the Constant. Likely a United States citizen and a gentleman and a scientist all at once, while also being the only survivor to have the privilege of his middle and last name being revealed to our grubby little hands, Wilson was taken to the Constant after striking an unfortunate deal with Maxwell for secret knowledge that he aspired to know of, since he never really reached any of the heights that he always dreamed of. Technically, he did receive this secret knowledge that Maxwell promised. Interestingly, Wilson blew up the chemistry lab of his college, leading him to both get expelled and be forced to cough up an insane amount of money for the repairs. This could be a reason as to why he decided to live far away from society. Another more morbid theory is that Wilson actually escaped the big cities to avoid being drafted for the World War, considering the time period that we are in. Willow. Not much is known about this insane pyromaniac pre-Constant, except that she was an orphan and heavily abused at that. Exactly how she got put into the Constant remains a mystery, but I propose a theory. In Wickerbottom's animated short, we see that she was working with either them or Maxwell. My assumption is that she struck a deal with Maxwell or them to do their dirty work in the real world, which is why she burnt down Wickerbottom's library. After she had completed what they needed of her, they took her into the Constant. Now, obviously, this is not canon, but this is the most likely theory I can come up with as to how she ended up here. Perhaps they always wanted to get rid of her, seeing as Bernie, Willow's teddy bear, managed to make a Terrorbeak cower in fear. Wolfgang. A young bodybuilder from somewhere in Eastern Europe, Wolfgang likely came to America in search of a better, new life. Armed with the little English he spoke, he found himself working for a moving circus, and after an unfortunate incident revealed him and his workplace as frauds, Wolfgang vowed to himself to get stronger, strong enough for nothing like that to ever occur again. Just then, his circus co-workers were robbed in the middle of nowhere, and shortly after, a train unfortunately managed to crash right into them, a train which housed William Carter, who would later be known as Maxwell. Through the use of shadow magic, William helped Wolfgang lift a large rail car that he was stuck under, letting William free into the Wild West of the United States. This leaves Wolfgang questioning if what he just witnessed was real. And anything that occurs after this is purely speculation. Until, obviously, Wolfgang somehow manages to end up in the Constant. I imagine that he then swiftly returned to a normal life, until one day, Maxwell either struck a deal with him to give him that immense power he also desired, which he did not lie about, or Maxwell decided to give his thanks to Wolfgang by trapping him in the Constant so he can endlessly suffer and wince at every waking second he spends there. Another likely theory is that they thought that Wolfgang had seen too much, so they instructed Maxwell to bring him into the Constant. Wendy. Being the daughter of William Carter's twin brother, Jack Carter, led Wendy to having a twin sister named Abigail, and after an unfortunate incident occurred which managed to cause Abigail's premature death, Wendy swiftly spiraled into a depressive arc in which she hallucinated things such as her own sister coming back to life so they can be together again. She even turned to things such as spirit mediums who claimed they can talk to the deceased, none of which worked. Until one day, a strange tune began to play through the gramophone that Wendy had in her own room. Mistaking this for a sign from Abigail, Wendy possibly agreed to some sort of terms to bring Abigail back, and ended up being taken in the Constant. Now, addressing the clear elephant in the room, yes, William or Maxwell is Wendy and Abigail's uncle. There are many quotes that imply he suspects a kinship with Wendy and Abigail, which doesn't help but make one wonder, why would Maxwell subject an already depressed child to such a thing? However, he again did not exactly spout lies, for Wendy is actually reunited with her twin sister, which is what she's ironically most well known for in our community. WX-78. Being the partner of fellow scientist Robert Wagstaff led Wicks to perform some slightly inhumane experiments on animals, eventually leading to them trapping their own consciousness by inputting it inside of WX-78, a robot prototype that they were creating with Wagstaff, that's purpose still remains unknown. Wicks slowly became more and more unhappy with their situation, leading to them lashing out at Wagstaff many times, which eventually led to Wagstaff burning any of the blueprints he had of WX-78, and swiftly sending Wicks into the Constant as a gnarly sign to not mess with him. WX-78 hates all organic life, a developing hatred likely ignited by none other but Wagstaff. Wickerbottom. Miss Wickerbottom was an aspiring librarian with a slight obsession for felines. She kept many notes and curiosities of the Constant, wanting to learn everything about everything. This led to her being in the all-seeing eye of them, which then caused Maxwell to instruct Willow to burn down her library, during which he took her into the Constant, storing all of her knowledge on the way, while also taking some of her notes of the Constant. How she managed to acquire all of this random knowledge of the Constant, we may never know, but what we know for sure is that they do not like it when someone knows of their existence, or anything about the Constant, a pattern which we will notice more later on. Curiously, the quote for the Forlorn Doll Willow skin seems to hint at some sort of connection between Willow and Wickerbottom, because the Forlorn Doll just so happens to be in Wickerbottom's same basement that everything else Constant related is in. Weber. Weber was a farm boy living a pretty boring but stable life in the middle of the woods. His father being some sort of scientist, he eventually managed to somehow acquire a spider straight from the Constant, from someone who appears to be Wagstaff himself. Weber, wanting to get his father's attention after being ignored continuously, broke into his father's room and knocked over the spider, leading to him being eaten whole. Shockingly enough, this actually led to him getting his own body combined with that of the spider, becoming a weird human Constant spider hybrid. This was not taken well by his parents, who were understandably frightened at the mere sight of such a monstrosity, chasing Weber out of their home. Weber was fragile and scared, and just who decided to show up and offer salvation to the poor kid? My best guess as to why they specifically chose Weber is that obviously he turned into a Constant spider, something which them wouldn't enjoy being in our world. It was either going to be Weber or his father, as I don't think them would like someone owning a Constant spider. A bad stroke of luck and a little bit of mischief sealed Weber as the one to be taken. Also, he's likely Scottish, a nation which was still unfortunately oppressed at this time, potentially causing Weber's parents to move to the United States. Walter. Walter was a Boy Scout from Canada, filled with a keen sense of curiosity, which eventually drove him to hunt down the mythical werebeaver, rumored to exist amongst Canada. This led to him to discover a cabin in the middle of the woods. A quick investigation led him to discover an ancient gramophone, and then repair it, causing him to get sent into the Constant. Exactly like his gameplay, he is lame and boring. And has a bee allergy, apparently. Woodie. The werebeaver himself. As we see with what occurred to Walter, I'd imagine he got taken into the Constant by the same gramophone that took Walter. I imagine Maxwell made a deal with him to have Lucy actually have a voice, and again, he didn't lie. Unfortunately. So now, we're all stuck dealing with Lucy's nonsense. Also, he is a gambling addict. Wes. Wes was a broke mime working in the streets of Paris, living day by day hoping that he is able to make it to the next, cursed to have terrible luck for his entire life. Until one fateful day, a little girl had dropped her doll on his head. Wes, being the nicest man alive at that time, tied a balloon to it and got it to float all the way back to her. But a gust of wind blew the balloon and doll. Wes, in again, an amazingly kind act for the time, abandoned his hat and props that he had for his street art, and chased after the doll, bumping into many people and objects, and surprisingly causing amazing fortune to those around him, at the cost of his own. This all culminated in Wes stumbling upon a man by the name of George D. Wiverstone, who was about to be taken into the Constant by Maxwell, bumping into him and coincidentally saving him from them and Maxwell. And in Wes's last act of kindness, Wiverstone was coincidentally the father of the little girl that Wes tried to help, and in the end, she got her doll back, and the world moved on without him. No one even noticed he was gone. As a fun fact after all of that, Wes's animated short is titled C'est la vie, which roughly translates to Such is Life, and is used to calmly accept what happens to one, also signifying the ups and downs of life. As a note for you, remember Wiverstone. He will be important later. Wirt. Winona. Winona is the sister of Charlie herself, the Queen of Darkness, and worked under Wagstaff's wing in his very own Voxola factory. the same factory that presumably produced the Voxola radios and gramophones. After the factory catches fire due to an unknown incident, Wagstaff falls into a portal that they were all working on that presumably leads to the Constant, and after it breaks, Winona repairs it and sees Charlie, and then is swiftly pulled into the Constant. Winona never actually knew Maxwell before the Constant, which is hinted at by her quote for the Maxwell statue. The reason she didn't is because Charlie and Maxwell were supposed to go visit her sometime, but that never happened. Warley. Warley gave up a promising career as a chef in France to tend to his sick mother, who most likely had some sort of dementia. His amazing cooking skills would always bring back a bit of her memory, but eventually, even that wasn't enough, which led Warley to strike a deal with an unfortunate man at an unfortunate time. His mother has probably passed away since then. Warley's country of origin remains a mystery. However, perhaps his voice can hint at where he's from. Warley's voice is a steel pan, which could imply that his country of origin to be Trinidad and Tobago, which is a country located in the Caribbean. Wormwood. Wormwood is a son of Alter, Alter being the moon in the sky. After falling from Alter as just a gem, the plants around Wormwood slowly grew him a body for him to inherit and be in. So yes, Wormwood is not this plant. It's actually this thing. Similar to Walter, he is not that interesting. There isn't much to say on him specifically. What there is to say, however, is the implications that a single gem can give life to anything. It really depends on how one interprets this, but overall, Alter seems to have the ability to give life in some way. Perhaps he's given life to other creatures in the Constant. Wartox. Wartox was hatched from an egg in the Constant, as shown from his quote for the larvae tooth. He grew up amongst other imps, as also shown in another quote, and eventually he got close with a Krampus. They would go around the Constant doing no good to anyone, stealing and wishing for more and more, until one fateful day, Krampus saw an opportunity to kidnap a beefalo, which is where Wartox decided to draw the line, and after a brief and messy tug-of-war with his own friend, Wartox's curse of possession began to take shape, leading to the imp becoming who he is now. A not so well known fact is that Wartox's possession abilities seem to only occur upon the touch or shake of his hand, as seen in many quotes where he refuses to actually touch anyone. He even refuses to pet many of the critters, as he does not want to take their souls on accident. He also assures the kids like Weber and Wendy that he will not partake in the act of eating their soul, much unlike his quotes for the adult survivors. Another interesting fact that not many know is that Wartox had actually at some point given cup noodles to some of the survivors, mistaking them for worms, and no one actually knows where he got them from, according to a forum post from 2023. Wanda. Oh, here we go. Wanda the Timekeeper is a grandma likely from somewhere Slavic due to quotes in which she references her baba, which in most Slavic languages means grandma. She also appears to have resided in the United Kingdom, and likely lived sometime after the Victorian era, but somehow, some way, she has access to the very fabric of time, bending it to her own will and doing whatever she pleases, including de-aging herself, bringing herself back or forward in time, and creating interdimensional wormholes able to carry people in them, which obviously made her get caught in the all-seeing eyes of them, leading them to chase her down, and after a mishap which unfortunately cost one of her many Rift Watches, it causes this. There are many ways to interpret this, but the way I see it, Wanda just broke time itself, revealing the past, present, and future of the Constant to herself, and allowing herself to get pulled into the Constant by them. Wanda obviously knows a lot about shadow magic. The fact all of her clocks and machinery is fueled off of nightmare fuel alone should be proof enough of that. But, interestingly, her quote for the Codex is a simple but intrigued, Perhaps she has seen the Codex before. It wouldn't be above her to have seen it in another timeline, but one question remains. If she had the literal ability to manipulate time itself, why not stop all of this from happening? Perhaps she was in the process of kickstarting an operation that would do exactly that, which is why them wanted to immediately have her in the constant, so she wouldn't be able to change what she shall not. Wigfrid. Wigfrid is not this warrior's real name. In fact, she is not a warrior at all. She is a stage performer famous for her role as a Valkyrie and her amazing voice, but after a splash of criticism from the local newspaper goes her way, she is totally appalled at this and thinks that the best way to deal with her criticism is to roleplay the criticism turning into a wild beast, and her being given the task to slay it. Maxwell and them find this amusing, wanting to strike a deal with her to bring her into the constant, under the guise of the constant being a stage. A stage for her to truly shine as the most powerful Valkyrie this world has ever seen. Wigfrid still believes this illusion to this day, and Maxwell refuses to tell her the truth, as it would likely lead to unwanted consequences. Maxwell. And finally, we finish off with the ex-king of the constant, William Carter. William and Jack Carter are British-born people, with Jack departing to America long before William did, both likely living in the English capital of London beforehand. In July of 1901, William made the decision to travel to the United States, more specifically to New York City, to start a new, beautiful life as a stage performer. His first couple of shows did not go so well, and after investing in props for said shows, but receiving nothing in return, William became absolutely bankrupt and was in debt to none other but one George D. Witherspoon, whom apparently does not know how to spell the word money. Around the same time, Jack invites Maxwell to come visit him and the twins, which, if it wasn't glaringly obvious, are Wendy and Abigail, in California, and Maxwell does take him up on that offer. What could go wrong? Being in such a position and going out to visit your wonderful brother and his kids. And then the train collided with a moving circus, and that is where Wolfgang and William's paths crossed for the first time. A little before this, William had discovered the Codex Umbra and began trying to decipher its codes. The Codex being a magical, mystical shadow magic book thing from the Constant that was apparently just hanging around in the real world. After the collision, William had written a note to Jack but never sent it, explaining details about the Codex Umbra, perhaps worried that someone that was not Jack would read it. He also mentioned that he would continue his journey toward California, and that there were reports of his demise, which, obviously, were false. And after some time passed and things calmed down, William Carter had figured out some of the secrets of shadow magic, and thus, William was now dead. No longer would a pitiful, incompetent magician be the one attempting to entertain the people of America. Instead, William would go under a new alias, an alias that foreshadows his downfall. His new name would be Maxwell. Maxwell the Great. His new shows utilizing shadow magic were a massive success, enamoring the people and earning himself quite a sustainable living. But something was missing. That something being an assistant. So, Maxwell started looking for one, and eventually found who but a young aspiring lady by the humble name of Charlie. They started working together, getting closer and closer by day, perhaps even falling in love with each other, but eventually, Maxwell started keeping to himself more and more, going insane from the Codex, which led to Charlie breaking into his apartment and discovering a secret hideout he had, filled with names and Latin words scribbled on the walls, signaling to her that Maxwell had completely lost it. Without a second thought, Charlie stole Maxwell's stage clothes and ran as fast as she could. She returned eventually and slipped a note under his door, informing him that she had taken his clothes and the Codex with her, and that she hopes to see him at the theater tonight. And on that same night, on April 17th, 1906, the final act of the amazing Maxwell had happened. Them trying to take Maxwell into the constant was so powerful that it caused the biggest California earthquake and one of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded, the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. A very real event that led to many people losing their lives, homes, families, workplaces, anything that they had was lost. After this, a string of unexplained disappearances started occurring all over the United States. Charlie became trapped in the darkness, being forced to kill what moved at night without light. Maxwell was then crowned as king, but really nothing but a puppet to them. He started creating the different branches of the constant, the Forge and Gorge apparently already being there beforehand, then pulling in Wilson and everyone else for reasons unknown to this day, which eventually led to Wilson stumbling his way into the Nightmare Throne room where Maxwell was sat for an eternity, and letting him go free against his better judgment. Thus, the cycle began anew. Wilson was now the king of the constant, and sat as so for a long, long time, before eventually being discovered by Charlie, who then took that from him and made herself queen of the constant. Later, Maxwell encountered Wilson, and after a short argument, they built some sort of contraption, which got hijacked by Charlie, and then led to every survivor being trapped here to be brought together. Everything terrible that has ever occurred to every single one of these people can be pinned down to Maxwell. But let's be honest, had he not been the one who discovered the Codex, worse events could have transpired. Now, everyone is stuck in this nightmare, living inside some people's definition of hell, and yet, somehow, it could still be worse. At least now, after all of this, all of their stories, everything that they experienced, they still have each other. And most importantly, they didn't starve.
All you do is drugs, you're like the sex and